All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on our next Rural Business Resource Workshop with our friends at Mountain Mojo. We're really excited to be here today. Just to fill you in on a little bit about Local First and why we're doing this. If you're unfamiliar, Local First Arizona is a statewide organization providing information, resources, and opportunities to locally owned businesses all throughout the state. And you're participating in a really special opportunity where we are deploying education and resources to rural businesses in Arizona by rural businesses in Arizona. So this is the third workshop in our series. And if you're interested in accessing any of our previous workshops, we will send out a link to our rural business resource page after this as well, where we are going to be providing a lot of content and information in the future as well. So really excited to have you here today. And to get started on all of these, we always like to ask if everyone participating would just drop into the chat section the name of your business and where you are in Arizona, or if you're not currently in a rural town, what your favorite rural town to be in or work out of is to get us started. That would be awesome. So with that, I'm going to hand it right over to Rand with Mountain Mojo, who's going to be leading us off today. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate the invite, and we are excited. Anything to do with Local First Arizona, it's like one of those unconditional love relationships. We're always all in. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen and bringing up the workshop presentation that we're going to review today, and just go over a few things as far as goals go. That's not it. Okay, does everyone see a content strategy workbook? You're good to go? Awesome. So if you haven't done this yet, we can drop it in the chat and have, you can either download this or you can go directly in there and just make a copy. But basically the goal of today is to fill out this particular document. You can follow along and take notes if you'd like. But we like to have these, workshops actually be workshops, like working. So we'll get started on let's see, on the presentation. Oh, awesome. So today we're going to be talking about how to build a successful content strategy. Hopefully in the next 40 to 45 minutes, you'll be able to fill out this document. And at the end of this conversation, we'll share this whole slide deck, which is meant for a 4-hour workshop. We'll be able to share it with you, but you'll be able to see or have a plan that you'll be able to hopefully get a little bit of traction with based on, this quick workshop. The only other thing to keep in mind is that we'll have a little bit of question and answer through each section. We're going to cover 7 steps today. So just hold off and then raise your hand and we'll get to you real quick to make sure we get your questions, and then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A at the end, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how much time we have, to be able to get also any questions as far as like next steps or action items, that kind of thing. And then Mariah, who's also on the Mojo team, is here. And so she'll be responding to you in your chat if you have any real-time questions that you want to be able to throw in there. And then she'll also be able to coordinate getting you information after the workbook or the workshop if you need anything else. Let's see. So the goal of today, very quick question, how do you eat an elephant? Maybe some of you know. Basically, it's one bite at a time. A majority of the work shops that we do or the clients that we talk to, they just don't know where to get started when it comes to marketing. And so today we're hoping to give you a really nice plan for one very specific campaign that you can be able to roll out, hopefully in the next week or two. But then once you have that plan and you have other ideas as far as campaigns go, then you're going to be able to, replicate the formula in which you created the first campaign for other campaigns. So that's the goal. Quick intro, we're Mountain Mojo. This is our mission and vision, our core values, and our non-negotiables. That's a picture that we just took with the team a couple weeks ago. We're up to 15 people now, and we're located in Flagstaff, Arizona. I'll be your host today. I am the director of strategy, so typically on a day-to-day, I will come up with what a digital marketing strategy will be for our clients. We build those out, then we execute them, and we meet with our clients on a monthly basis. And based on the data and the analytics, I help to kind of tweak or move or pivot or evolve, optimize campaigns so that our clients have, really successful marketing. Mariah, do you want to say hello real quick?
Sorry, I was trying to keep up with the chat. There's so many
Yeah,
people in here.
we're
We're
killing
very excited you're here. I'm Mariah Zavala Lios Anchanyavon. Those are my greetings in Yoeme. I'm Oaxacan, Puerto Rican, and Yaqui. So we try to introduce in those languages when we can. I've been in Flagstaff for about 5 years, and I'm Rand's #2 person now, the business development specialist. I love community. I love local first, and we are super excited to be here. So I'll be behind the scenes on the chat. Please feel free to direct message me while we're on here or put any questions in, and we'll try our best to keep up throughout the presentation.
Thank you. Awesome. So we're going to cover these 7 steps today, and we're going to start off with a campaign goal. Then we're going to try and figure out team and assets, what it would take to make sure that you're ready to run a campaign, who you're going to run it for, what the branding looks like, basic content foundation or your content strategy, and then the execution. So as far as committing to your campaign goal goes, I kind of flipped this workshop upside down. I thought about it this morning, and it might make sense to show you exactly what a campaign looks like as far as an outcome goes before we dig in. So right now, we're going to go a little bit off script, and I'm going to show you real quick. We had a client, and I chose this client specifically because they are local. They're rural, they're a small business, and they're a destination. So we got the list of everyone who was attending today, and there was a lot of destination people, a lot of small business people, a lot of rural people. And so we think this particular group represents all of those when it comes to a specific campaign. So this business, Arizona Nordic Village, is a destination in Flagstaff, specifically for people to be able to do weddings, cross-country ski. They have a bunch of cabins. You can rent gear. It's a really fun place to go, but they wanted to get more wedding bookings. And so we created a campaign where it was focused around a giveaway to win a free wedding venue rental, but then we had all of the marketing kind of attached to that. And so I wanted to give you some quick visuals. This is what the landing page on the website for this particular campaign looked like. This is what social media post would look like, as far as the photography and some of the language. And then this is another piece of that landing page that we also used in social and on newsletters to their email audience. Just as far as a little bit of the design and what the branding ended up looking like. So I wanted to show you that real quick and then let you know, based on that particular campaign, it cost about $2,000 total to run, and they got about $47,000 worth of sales out of it. So obviously website traffic increase, Facebook likes. We got, a ton of clicks coming to their website, contest submissions. So we captured, a tremendous amount of emails, almost 600 emails. And so that was a really successful campaign. All right, so now that we know what a campaign looks like, we'll go back into slideshow mode. On your workbook, you'll see that you're committing to a campaign goal. So really basic, and this probably seems simple, but we really want you to focus on either a product or a service, but a very specific one within your world. So if you're selling something, you're trying to get somebody to come visit, what is it exactly that you're trying to do? And if you can be very specific with that in your workbook, we're going to go ahead and get that goal set right now. I'll give you just a few seconds. If anyone has any questions, throw it in the chat. We'll try and get to you. But we're really trying to focus on what your goal is for any specific campaign. I'm sure you came here with a whole lot of ideas on marketing, so just choose one. Awesome. So we'll leave that up for a second. And then when it comes to revenue or branding, there are two options when you're running a marketing campaign. Sometimes you'll do both, but typically you either want to convert someone for some reason, you want to convert them by having them pay you or having them book a meeting with you, but some sort of a conversion, or you're looking for brand awareness. You're just trying to get the word out or you're trying to stay top of mind. So either of those two things is perfectly acceptable goal. If you're trying to do both, you might be trying to do too much. Typically, you want to really focus on one or the other. But that's what number 2 on your workbook looks like is, what exactly are you looking for, revenue or branding? And then what does that look like when it comes to that goal? I'll give you just a few minutes. Please feel free to ask any questions if you've got them. And then lastly, and this is mostly not necessarily a question, it's just for you to start thinking in the back of your mind, is how you're going to track this marketing campaign performance. So we give you a whole bunch of answers for this one, but really just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, does everybody feel comfortable moving on? All right, we will move on to choosing your team and identifying your assets. So most of you on this call have some sort of a website, you have some social media presence, you have all of these different things. So just real quick, when it comes to your workbook from an employee standpoint, or if you're a solopreneur, what do you have access to? And then make a little note of the name that you have access to these people, or if you don't have access, maybe you don't want to use them. You're just going to start small. You don't need all of these people to run your campaign. You can do it yourself. But who do you have that might be able to help you out? And this does include subcontractors or vendors. Awesome. And then you'll see number 4 in step number 2, and it talks about budget. And please tell me to slow down, or you can drop a note in the chat if we're going too fast. We're trying to cover a whole lot today, so I'm just going to kind of keep grinding through this. But when it comes to a budget, typically what we tell people, you can Google this or you can talk to a marketing person, is there's going to be a certain benchmark within your industry of a percentage of what you should be paying in order to accomplish your goal. And so, either you're a nonprofit and you've got grant money, and so you can spend this amount of money on marketing, this amount of money on advertisements. Or if you're a small business, typically with it, depending on your industry, you're going to spend 3% or 5% or 10% of your gross revenue on marketing. And then you would just kind of parse out how much you would spend on this particular campaign. And so a good example of this was the Nordic Village. We spent $2,000 total. I'm guessing probably 1,500 of that was photography and getting a landing page built and the social media stuff built, and then another $500 specifically on Google and Facebook, for the paid advertisements. And then based on that, we had a return, I don't remember now, but hopefully of about $47,000. So we had a pretty high ROI on that. But you should be able to kind of come up with those numbers. And if you can't, drop a question in the chat, or we'll have a Q&A here in a second. Give everybody just a few more seconds. Awesome. So we like to tell people that before you host a party, you kind of got to clean up your house before you invite folks over, right? And so a big thing for you to focus on when it comes to these marketing assets, and we made a big list here for you in your workbook, is trying to figure out what you have and what potentially has had deferred maintenance that you might want to go in and clean up before you start running a campaign. The last thing you want to do is, run a campaign, try and get visitors to come to your website so that they will come to your town to visit. And then the website isn't up to date, or it doesn't really load very fast, or the photos are out of date, or your social media hasn't had a post in 3 years. So right now, if you could just take a peek at all those things and see maybe a quick rating, A through F, old school ratings, and just see, how much time you might need to put into any of these assets. And if you don't have them at all, potentially you don't have a logo, or if you don't have a website, then definitely put a check mark next to those, and that'll go into part of the budget that you'll need. All right. Feeling good? Hopefully not too overwhelmed. I don't mean to give everybody homework first thing in the morning, but you can start filling in what assets do you need to create, and then what assets do you need to bring up to par to be able to run a campaign. And although this isn't a full marketing campaign or a full marketing plan, a lot of this would contribute to your marketing plan, assuming you have one already or that you're about to build one. This particular section is perfect for what you would want within your marketing plan too. Okay. So these are just some examples that we would dig in if we had a few more minutes with one another. Oh, another thing that to keep in mind is your reputation. So looking up your reviews on individual reputation platforms and just making sure that those are cleaned up, responded to. If there's any bad ones that you've, put a response in there. Any good ones, definitely put a response in there as well. So we talk a little bit about influencer marketing here and there. If you are a destination, small business, or a nonprofit, micro influencers are a really great thing to look into. Obviously, everyone knows why we do digital marketing. Oh, and one other thing, traditional marketing, there might be some people on this call, radio, print, newspaper, all of those types of things are still, especially in rural communities, still running really strong with great results, depending on how much money you have to invest. And never underestimate the power of a press release. Here's an example of a sign we did for a destination. We were trying to figure out the destination / small businesses. Awesome. Kind of rough idea of a budget. We were talking about this earlier when it comes to which industry you might be in and what percentage you potentially should be spending on an annual basis. And if you're curious, say you're $1 million business and you want to spend 8%, so that's $80,000, and you're like, how much do I spend on this particular campaign? You really would have to look at the full year, how often you want to run the campaign. And if you want to run one campaign a year or a month, you would just divide that $80,000 by 12, and then you'd be able to have what your budget looks like. And another question that a lot of people ask in this section, if you have a marketing person, that marketing person and their salary doesn't always or doesn't usually fall within this percentage of a budget. This is just on marketing creation, like content creation, and then ad spend, those two things. Okay. Everybody's good with section 2, step 2? I think we're still on track for time. Mariah, do we have any questions? Does anyone want to?
Yes, I was just replying to Scott Sawyer from Flag Tag AZ, based in Flag. Hi, Scott. On traditional media, radio, etc., and what number figure makes a difference and what is not enough. If you'd like to jump on, I was going to reply with how the number can vary based on the industry, right? That finding these numbers comes from research and strategy that tie into the goals you and your organization are aiming for and creating, which is part of why we're providing the guidebook. And then I think when he asked it, you were getting into the nuts and bolts of it, like that 8% and those numbers.
Yeah, definitely. So, within his industry, he's probably familiar. You could throw a dart at 10% and start from there. And then as you start to measure your analytics and your ROI, you can see whether or not 10% is too much or not enough. You're really looking at customer acquisition costs. So as your business grows older and there's more brand recognition for it, you should be able to spend less money on marketing. And because you're not trying to acquire new customers, you're just trying to keep your brand up, top of mind on a day to day. And that's a lot cheaper to do brand awareness than it is to grab someone that's never heard of you and then get them to walk into your shop. When it comes to the difference between traditional and digital, like as far as a balance goes, it really depends on your market. Luckily, you're in Flagstaff. We can kind of tell you pretty quickly that we'd probably be like 90-10 or 80-20 as far as digital to traditional, just based on ROI. So, 10 or 20% of your entire budget would go to traditional, unless you have a very specific, we have a developer in town that does really well with radio in the valley. And so they shifted a lot of their money towards radio. But the cool part is, and we'll kind of get into this in a little bit, is when you start to do this campaign, and our step 7 will really talk about benchmarking and analytics. If you just kind of put $10 here, $100 there, in all of these different situations, you should be able to measure your ROI on this first campaign and then start to prioritize or, reproportion your budget towards what's working and what's not. And then the other question would be, well, do I use radio? How much do I spend on radio or print? It's usually really good to ask those sales reps, the biz dev people, for case studies, the most recent case studies possible that are very parallel to your industry. So, if you can ask them, is there anyone else that has a really cool spot in town that they're trying to drive traffic, that has advertised with you in the past, hopefully, within the last 3 to 6 months. And they should be able to give you 2 or 3 case studies. And those case studies should then show you projected traffic. And then from that traffic, you can kind of do the math. If they can give me 500 more people to come to my website, I typically convert, 5% of those. So that would be 25 new customers. For every customer that comes in the door, that's $20. That'd be $500, for ROI from this particular advertising. Any other questions?
We don't have any other questions. I just wanted to reiterate for the group. I know it's a lot of information, but this is more of like a guiding hand. And if there's other questions we can answer, and you have follow-up, feel free to put in your contact information in the chat or anything like that. Local First is very respectful of your guys' information, so we don't have any access to that at all. We just know the names of the businesses that are here.
You bet. We'd love to, if any of you have questions about how to build your campaign, or as you're building this out, you'd like to learn more, please reach out and we'll spend a few minutes and go through what is specific to you. The really difficult part about these types of presentations is there's very different people in the room right now with different motivations, different life cycle within their business. So we're trying to give you kind of a blanket understanding of best practices. And so hopefully you can start to eat that elephant one bite at a time. Okay, so buttoning up, this is, we'll run through this because I don't think we can really workshop all of your individual assets right now, but know that you can come back to this section and really dig in. There's going to be some things in here that will give you very specific, are you good or are you not good? Does your website need work or does it not need work? There are links in here also. Is my logo good or is my logo not good? Is my social good, not so good? So the buttoning up portion, especially if you've had any deferred maintenance, is really focused on you being able to go asset to asset. And since you're not a full-time marketer, being able to interpret what it is that your marketing assets need. Oh, I'm going to
Is
put
there a way, is it
Charlinda?
possible for you to kind of tell us like why the left side's got thumbs down and then the right side's got hands up? Like just quickly?
You bet. We can kind of dig in real quick. I will do a high level. So basic best practices for website. is typically trying to make sure that everything is legible for someone to read, that there's more than enough white space, there's not just a tremendous amount of text on there, and that the imagery itself creates an emotion. And so what we have here is kind of the difference between those two things. And then from a branding standpoint, you want to make sure that the color palette that you have selected, the fonts that you've selected are very intentional on your website, and that you don't have 6 different fonts that really confuse people subconsciously, and that you have the same consistent colors throughout your website. For social media, something very similar, really trying to focus on something that's going to make somebody stop scrolling. Make sure that you're incorporating hashtags. Sometimes you have a tremendous amount of success with 5 hashtags. Some, and there's debates on the internet that'll tell you you should have 20 hashtags. So all of those types of things are best practices. For logos, we just really want high resolution logos. We want something clean that people can see and understand. Let's see. Any sort of posters, brochures, those types of things. It's all about formatting and layout. So we don't want it to be too busy. We want it to be, visually pleasing. And we definitely, as much as possible, whether it's a website or social media or a flyer, smiling faces. As many smiling faces as you can put into that. Specifically, I mean, people refer to that as lifestyle photography, but as much of that as you can get in there. Does that help? And can you pronounce your name for me so that I'm good moving forward?
My name is Charlinda. Thank you. That was good. Thanks.
Charlinda. Perfect. Rachel?
Good morning, and thank you so much for this presentation. This is great information. So with the city, we are a department, and we are actually in the process of having our website designed. There was something that you mentioned that I mentioned to our IT person, and it was about the quality of the photo was very dark to me. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because the clarity when you showed that example made a lot of sense. We are working on our fiscal year budget for July 1, and we just had our department meeting. This is something you mentioned about the advertising specials. How soon could you get that to me so that I could present that to be included in our upcoming budget?
Got it. When you say advertising specials, what do you mean by that? Could you clarify?
Oh, Rand, I'll jump in. That was an announcement Thomas made in the chat that Local First Arizona will be announcing some discounts for Northern, Southern, and Central Arizona for traditional advertising. So Thomas will be the go-to.
Yeah, for members of Local First, we're going to be sending out a newsletter next week that announces what those specials are going to be. So if you're on our newsletter list, you'll see what those are very, very soon.
I don't think that I am. I just received this invitation, so I'm not even a member yet. I need to do all of that.
Well, we're happy to follow up with you and make sure
Perfect.
you
That
get
would be
the
great.
info. Yeah.
Okay. I'll send you an email.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm glad you brought that up, and thanks, Mariah, for clarifying that. When Thomas asked if, kind of wrangled a whole bunch of us marketers in rural Arizona, he also mentioned, well, what can we offer these people as far as services go, to make it affordable for them to be able to get started, to get some marketing going. So we're really excited about that. Anytime we can fight the big guys with some smaller budgets, we're pretty excited. Okay. Let's see. We are going to identifying your audience. Awesome. So now we're going to talk through a little bit about why it's very specific that you should come up with demographics and psychographics. So when you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one. So really remember that. You really want to be able to create a campaign that is hyper-focused on as narrow an audience as possible. This is typically where small business owners will push back and say, but yeah, my business is perfect for everyone, or my town is perfect for everyone to visit, which is totally fine. But if you don't identify the very specific type of person you want for your campaign, your marketing, the imagery, the wording, all of those things aren't going to relate to someone specifically. And so that's where you really want to drill down into exactly who you're going after. Not only does it help you to make sure that your ad is clicked on because they're like, oh my goodness, that's me. but also the fact that now you're able to process, okay, well, what does a great visitor look like or a great customer look like? And you're able to figure out where they're consuming their media. Some younger people might be on social media. Some, boomers might be where you want to get a billboard up in some sort of drive radius from your destination. So this is something that you can use as a template. You'll be able to copy and paste this when we share this over. But what we're really trying to dig into is all of this person's day-to-day. When they wake up, what do they think about? What do they look at? Are they on their phone? Are they looking at the news? What do they drive? What are their clothes? What clothes do they love? All of these types of things. And you want to put as much information down as possible. And the reason why you want to do this is when you start to do like you're building out your landing page for your campaign or your social media post for this particular person, you pull this slide up and you look at Carrie and you're like, what would I say to Carrie if her and I were sitting down right now at lunch? How would I tell her about, how she should come to my place and throw axes, or she should come, visit us in this particular city or town? And your messaging will be the two most important things that you need to be, which is authentic and accurate. So it's going to be exactly what she's looking for, and it's going to be real because you're speaking to her, just like you would be speaking to someone as if you were sitting across the table from them. And never, not never, but very rarely should you ever post on social media something that you wouldn't bring up and have a conversation with a friend of yours. Otherwise, you're really selling and you just will get lost in the noise. And then try and figure out what this person's personal goals are. And this is with a wine tour in Sedona is what we created this one. And so what are your goals as an organization and what are their goals and how do they align? And so you'll be able to copy and paste and kind of run through these. Here's another, we all know a wino Wendy, but here's another example of one. So there's two good examples in there and you should be able to kind of dig into those personas. So I'll give you a few minutes or probably a minute and you can kind of fill in a little bit on step 4. Because again, we really want to be able to have a nice plan when you come out of this workshop and something tangible that hopefully gives you the confidence to get going, assuming that you don't have a campaign going now.
And just a timer check, Rand, we're 35 minutes in, so I think we've got about a good 10 to 15 to go over the deck before Q&A.
That is fantastic. You're an amazing partner. It's exactly what I needed.
I just watch a lot of TV.
Yeah, it may seem silly, what kind of car do they drive? But when you start thinking about, oh, well, a lot of them drive Subarus. And then you go to the Subaru's Facebook page or their YouTube page and you start looking at where somebody is spending millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to acquire new customers, and they have huge floors full of marketers. And how are they narrowing down their messaging and what imagery are they using? Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, so that's, I'm identifying this particular car brand, but I really want to be able to look at what they're consuming and, what other brands like me are trying to go after the same person. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, as we give people one more minute to think about that, I just wanted to piggyback off of Rand. We met with a client the other day. We have Flagstaff Mall, Bonnie Boucher, if you haven't been up here. And if you're not familiar with rural northern Arizona, so the Flagstaff Mall, it's kind of this hub for people coming from the reservation and other rural cities. And so when we were talking about strategy, she had made this comment about mixers and all these business leaders who were like, the mall is terrible and nobody goes and I don't like it and I don't care for X, Y, and Z and all these different remarks. We made the point to explain that that's not her target audience. Like she doesn't need those guys to come in. That's not who she's looking for lead generation from. She's looking for lead generation from the people that are coming through town from the res that are stocking up at Sam's Club and that need to do back to school shopping for their kids, or the folks from Williams who are limited in the stuff they can take their kids to in the summer. So the mall is still a hub for them. So that's where strategy again really comes into play, is really figuring out who you're targeting so you're not just shooting at fish in a barrel.
Great real-time example. And it leads to probably one of the most important things, and yet the most common mistake we see in the world of marketing and it kind of leads back to empathy. And it's pretty cool because I think we're going to tie in here to some branding as far as mission and vision goes, Brene Brown kind of stuff. But the most common mistake is when someone builds a website, or they'll build a social media page, or they'll even, have a campaign where they're building social media posts, is they start to lean into what they're creating as to what it is that they like or their own experiences. And what you really need to do is take, your shoes off and put the shoes on of your persona and really think like them. Now you're communicating like a marketer, because whether or not you like certain colors or whether or not you like a certain landing page, if you are not the demographic you're trying to reach, your opinion does not matter. And it actually is very confusing to the marketers, and it can be really distracting to the people that are trying to weigh in. So nonprofit boards are guilty of this a lot. There are larger organizations where you have 4 or 5 people and someone's like, I don't like the colors in this, particular post. The post isn't for you. You need to, you can give us feedback on whether or not this is true to your brand, but please don't give us feedback on your personal opinions. So it's a great point. Okay, so this is another thing that I feel like people skip over when it comes to mission and vision statements. And luckily your workbook has a little bit of information on the bottom there to kind of to differentiate the two ways that you would come up with your mission and vision. But a lot of people come up with a mission and vision, or they'll do it, potentially in a boardroom, but then they kind of set it on a shelf, or they maybe paint it on a wall, but they don't think about it when they're actually, developing their marketing campaigns, or when they're actually, making a social media post. So it's really important, if you don't have a mission and vision, to come up with one. Vision is just how you see the world based on, what it is that your offerings are. And then your mission is how you're going to get there. How are you going to make the world how you see it, based on whatever business or organization you have, destination. And then those guiding principles, you can look up a lot of Brene Brown stuff when it comes to core values. She has a 200 or 300 word list online that you could look up, and really choosing 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most core values, defining those in this workbook, and then every single piece of marketing that you have moving forward, really kind of taking a peek and saying, okay, is this genuine to this specific mission or vision? And the cool part is sometimes the mission and vision will start to evolve as you start to evolve your messaging, because you're thinking about other people and who it is that you're interacting with. Okay. Any questions about that? These can be confusing sometimes. Here's some examples, and you'll have this deck to refer to.
Being mindful of time, I just wanted to check in with the group. If you guys had any questions, we can leave 15 minutes and wrap this up in 4 minutes for the group, or we can spend a couple more and just leave 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. If there's anybody that feels strongly, please just shout it out. Okay, somebody jumped in looking for 15 minutes left for the Q&A. Continue with presentation. One more person, and that's the deciding vote.
Keep it going. Keep the presentation going.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, we're going to keep going until 50 after.
Okay. Thank you for keeping me on track. I always lose track. So yeah, I think that, restating your goal at this point, and remember, like, this workbook, it could be you could run through this on another day, just set aside 2 hours, hopefully time block, and be able to sit down with it and start from the beginning to the end. So we're just kind of running through it to hopefully give you a rough idea of how to fill in every line. But if you have questions, ask for them, and then also know that you'll probably come back in here and dig in. Know that, for us to build a campaign strategy, it usually takes 4, 6, 8 hours to try and come up with this. And we're going to try and run through this in about 45 minutes. So if you're a little bit strained, that's totally normal. This is, we're giving you the high level stuff, but we're trying to give you in a holistic way so that you're not overwhelmed again, trying to, come up with a full marketing strategy. So identifying the goal is important. The target audience, I think you all have. when it comes to whether or not, or you're trying to figure out what we refer to as channels. You know, are these people on social media? Should I send this to my email news or through my email newsletter to my 2,000 email list? Should I send get a YouTube video, or should I buy some radio ads? When it comes to that kind of stuff, most of that can be answered on Google, and you can take a peek at that. If not, set all those questions aside, set up a call with Mariah and I, and we'll walk through what we have seen as far as analytics go when it comes to those things. But coming up with the channels is really going to help what content you create. And this is another important one. Oftentimes, from a content perspective, we're trying to either educate or entertain. Sometimes we're trying to engage. So education means, axe throwing actually helps you burn over 1,000 calories every time you go do it. That's awesome. Now, entertainment is a gif of someone throwing an axe over and over again, and then the engagement portion would be, do you prefer throwing axes or do you prefer throwing knives? So those are, some of the things when you come up with content that you're really trying to think through. How do I prioritize what these posts look like? Sorry, Scott, I'm going to pick on you because it's a real life example. Who your content speak to? I think we've covered that as far as personas go. And then which assets are you going to leverage? Which is going to be the difficult part, but you can fill in that part of your workbook, and then we can open it up for a couple of questions too. If anyone has questions there, sometimes choosing which channel or tactic can be really, really tough. Awesome. And as far as, for us, a few quick tips from a social media perspective. They really cut down on how much engagement you're going to get organically, but there's plenty of hacks to get around that. You have other partners that you can text to be able to, share, employees that can share certain things on Facebook that are trigger an algorithm to serve up to more people. A lot of social media stuff, tagging other people or following other people that hopefully will follow you. There's still a lot of ways to be able to boost your social media engagement. Email is really coming on strong. It's made a huge comeback over the last few years. Cleaning up your email list and providing something that is of value in your email newsletter to your crowd, your people, is extremely important. And if you're able to do that, especially in a rural community, because we don't necessarily always have, at least in Flagstaff, there are no TV channels. There's not a tremendous amount of big time news coming in. And so you are the news, you are, and what your business or your organization does is oftentimes newsworthy. And the best way to be able to get that news out is email. When it comes to search or SEO, you really want to hire somebody who knows SEO and make sure that your website's well written specifically for search engines. Traditional, I think I mentioned, really asking them for case studies and analytics. Never underestimate the power of word of mouth. Throwing up somebody, putting somebody on the side of the road with a sign oftentimes works, and it works really well nowadays. And then event activations. If there's a way that you can get a whole bunch of people to come to your place, or you can co-host an event that already exists, but make it at your place, any of those little things, people are looking to be able to get out, especially post-pandemic. Give them a reason to get out, and give them a reason to come to your place. So these are like, if you're running a campaign and you're trying to get a whole bunch of people to say your city or town, and you're trying to think about all of the ways to be able to do that, your campaign might be, we have the best, I think Flagstaff did this. We have the best festivals in all of Arizona in June. And so here are the 4 festivals. And then you put that on social media, and that the festival owners are also putting it on social media. Then you send that out in your newsletter. You have the billboards, everybody on the radio is talking about it. And so you're not just saying, hey, come visit Chino Valley. Instead, you're saying, come visit the festival hub, June festival hub in Arizona. It happens to be Chino Valley, but you're leveraging a campaign to be able to do that. Just a quick example. And as far as finding inspiration, never underestimate how powerful it is to look at someone who is a peer of yours, but has, a $10 million budget for marketing. Really scroll through their stuff, consume their YouTube, like go on their website and go page to page to page, because they probably have a team of people just like us who are all day, every day studying people's behavior patterns within all of those different channels. And they've optimized over the years and slowly have dialed in what the best case scenario is so that you don't have to experiment. You can do exactly what they're doing because most likely that the money that they're spending and the engagement they're getting is all because, they've figured out the secret sauce or the magic formula. This will be a really cool thing for everyone to do. If you want to run your website through a check, to be able to get what's going on, and you will not get emails from them. Luckily, this is a really cool site. But yeah, you can run your website through this website check and then bring it to someone like us. And, they can have, or we can have give you a really good idea of how much it would cost to get your website up to date. And there's all sorts of other things in here too for seeing how your social media is doing. Just a revisit of your branding or your goals, I'm sorry. And then typically at this point, you're pretty fired up. You've got your goals, you've got some campaign ideas, and this is a really nice time to be able to start thinking about, okay, well, if I were to run a campaign, what would that look like? Why, like, how would I do that? And so this is what we call a marketing flywheel. Some of you might be familiar with the marketing funnel. As far as like a sales funnel goes, people on the top, you're trying to get them in just to be able to know what your name is. People on the bottom are buying from you, and then they're telling their friends to buy from you. But we really think about the people that are on the bottom that are buying from you, that those are now your advocates, call them evangelists. And we want to make sure that those evangelists are feeding content. We're feeding them content, so they're feeding content to their peers, and that it's more of a flywheel than a funnel. And so there's some really good examples in here of what you might want to do for a campaign, but you can customize this, copy and paste and customize it to exactly what you need. Okay. Typically we would be in a group setting, in a giant classroom together, and we'd start to brainstorm. We have a little bit of time for Q&A. If your Q&A has something to do with a brainstorm and you want to go ahead, Mariah.
Great. I just had like 2 or 3 people ask about the screen where to check your website, please.
Got it. So you'll be able to get in here. So website grader, you can type in, you can look up broken link check, or you can type in GT metrics, METRIX. And any of those will give you like well, not even a high level. Some of those are pretty detailed. Will give you a rough idea of whether or not your website's performing well and why it is or isn't. Does that help?
I just put the link in the chat, and then Scott from Flag Tech did too. I put the link that you and I work through for projects, the broken link one.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks, Scott. All right. So usually we would be in this brainstorm part of the conversation. I'm going to skip through that, assuming that you are going to sit down with your peers or maybe a partner or a spouse while you're driving around, and you hopefully have a little bit of inspiration when it comes to what type of campaign you want to run. But now you have hopefully a roadmap step by step of how to be able to run that. We recommend Canva. If you don't have Canva, highly recommend getting it. You can put all your branding assets in there and it'll create almost anything for you nowadays. It is amazing, absolutely. And a really great founder story. If you ever listen to her, she is a really inspiring CEO. Oh, and then the last thing that I want to cover, and I'm glad that we're here, is We really want to make sure that when we run this campaign that we benchmark everything. You're not doing anything, all of a sudden you're about to do something. Well, how much traffic were you getting when you weren't doing anything? How much traffic are you getting now that you're doing something? Because if you're doing something and the needle doesn't move, if you don't get more Facebook engagement, you don't get any more traffic to the website, it's a really good time to be able to kind of peel back what it is that you did and try and figure out what's working or what's not. Or you move on to another campaign and you start to kind of A/B test. But over like 3, 6, 9 months, know that it takes a little bit of time. The analytics will slowly start to tell you, you need to run Facebook ads, but only Facebook ads on the weekends and only to this particular audience. You know, I want to send a monthly newsletter, but my monthly newsletter is, my open rate is way better on Thursday at 8 a.m. instead of Wednesday at 5 p.m. You'll slowly start to optimize all of those different things so that by the time you run 4 or 5 or 6 campaigns, now you're cooking with fire and you really got the some momentum going. But it really is the analytics that are important. How to read those analytics, we could do a whole class on. But usually you can get into the back end of Facebook, you know, and they'll prompt you. It's pretty intuitive. If you can't get into the back end of your website, whoever your webmaster is, just ask them for Google Analytics, or GA4 is what it's called now. So you can measure the traffic, but there's usually people around you that can create a report. It's often like somebody like asking your accountant for a P&L. Okay. That's it. Is anyone feeling inspired? Was that too much? People's head about to explode. Any feedback, please?
This was really great. I love the tangible things that we could work on after this session. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
Thank you for being here, Charlinda. For those of you who don't know Charlinda, please meet her. She's a big community advocate in Tucson and Indigenous communities, and just super great. So we're happy you're here and we're excited you asked those questions.
This was great information, and it actually supported before we transitioned from our EDO to the Office of Economic Opportunity. We were working on revamping our website, and it's so consistent with the process. So I appreciate the details. Even though it was condensed, it still was extremely helpful. And I thank you, because it's important to start off with who the target is, not just what we want to say. So I appreciate that.
That's a great point, Rachel. And one of the things that I like to tell folks is that you really want 2 U's for every we. Most of the time you'll go onto a website, and as soon as you start to read, it just says, you know, we are the best plumbers. We like to do plumbing. You know, we'll be at your house in under 2 hours. We, right?
Yeah.
And if you flip that and you really go into that empathetically, you're putting your shoes on to someone else, like, you can expect us to be there in under 2 hours. You're just kind of reframing it a little bit. You start throwing in, you know, at least 2 U's for every we. You'll all of a sudden, you know, your posts, your newsletter, you know, your website will their engagement will go a lot higher.
I love it.
Any other questions? Or Thomas, did you have like a closing next?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. Mariah, did you have something?
I was just going to share about the Rural Policy Forum for people who
Yeah,
would like a
please do.
not as condensed workshop. So if you aren't familiar with Local First Arizona's Rural Policy Forum, it's this really great get together that Thomas and other people from the team put on in a rural part of Arizona to present this open space for collaboration across rural organizations like the ones that are on the call. We'll be hosting a workshop, and I believe we have an hour and a half of time allocated for that. So if you guys want to learn more or just meet other people in the same position as you for collaboration or partnerships, we highly recommend going. That's going to be in August in Cottonwood and Clarkdale.
She's so good at hype, Thomas. That's what she does.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll make sure to include a link to the Rural Policy Forum in our follow-up email for today, so that everybody has that, along with today's presentation deck that Mountain Mojo has. So just wanted to thank everyone for participating. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for engaging with us. And thanks to Mountain Mojo, Rand and Mariah for being here and sharing all this really, really helpful information. Be on the lookout for more content like this from Local First. I dropped into the chat in July. We have our next rural workshop on local SEO. Rand was talking about finding a good SEO expert, so that's a great place to start if you don't have one. Or with Local Fi that month, who's out of Lake Havasu, and they're excited to share their expertise with you too. Like I mentioned, this is all recorded today. It's going to be up on a rural resource page probably by next week. And if we can be a resource for you at Local First Arizona, please connect with us and reach out. I also did mention that next week we'll be sending out some advertising specials for businesses all throughout Arizona, Northern, Central, and Southern for our upcoming campaign Indie Week that will be happening over the 4th of July week. So thank you all so much for participating. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and you'll hear more from Local First very soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.